Om Sahanavavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shakti Sthapakaya cha dharmasya sarvadharmaswarupine Avatara Ramakrishnaya te namaha Jananim Sharadam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Padapadme Tayo Shritva Pranamami Muhurmuhu Namah Shri Yatirajaya Vivekananda Suraye Satchit Sukaswarupaya Swamine Tapaharine Harihi Om Nakarmana na prajaya Dhane na tyage naike Amritatvama nashuhu Pare nanakam vihitanguhayam Vibhrajade tadyatayo vishanti Vedanta Vijnana Sunischitartha Sannyasa Yogad Yataya Shuddha Sattva Aha Te Brahma Loke Tupara Antakale Paramritat Parimucyanti Sarve Dakram Vipapam Parameshma Bhutai Yat Pundarikam Puramadhya Sargastam Tatrapi Dhakram Gaganam Vishokastasmin Yadantas Tadupasitavyam Yo Vedado Swaraf Prokto Vedante Cha Pratishtitaha Tasya Prakritilinasya Yah Parasa Maheshwaraha. We are well poised to start the fifth chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita happens to be the sum and substance and the essence and the nectarian essence of the message which we get from the Upanishads. Now, Upanishads, as we know, form the very essence of text, which is embodied text called Vedas. Now, we have to understand, if we have to understand the Vedic text, the difficulty is the language is very abstruse. And as a result, we will find a lot of commentators coming and helping us. For example, Sayanacharya. Sayanacharya has written a wonderful, exhaustive commentary for the entire text of Vedas, the Brahmanas, the Samhita. Mainly Brahmanas he concentrated, and apparently not so much, but a few of the Upanishads. But there was not a single comprehensive dealing of the text of Upanishads to come and tell us the sum and substance, this is what it is. One thing is to beat the antiquity in the presentation, in the language, in the vocabulary, in the similes given. That is one side of the story. Second side of the story is to instill confidence and faith that a practice even in the modern days is applicable. Well, Dwapara Yuga, when Sri Krishna was actually giving this message, was modern at that time. And the message that he fashioned during his advent has taken such a language with a kind of a universal appeal. And the language is so lucid and yet so modern. It has it has not compromised the total knowledge that we get from the Upanishads, but at the same time given in teeny meeny servings as much as a child can take and digest. A person who attempted this only will know how difficult the task is. This is Swamiji's statement when he took the message of Upanishads to the West and had to fashion it in English. Krishna at least had the advantage of doing it in Sanskrit. The Sanskrit is a very rich language designed to have this kind of a spiritual, a soul-oriented, consciousness-oriented conversation. That was possible, and that is immensely possible in Sanskrit even now, for that matter. The language is so rich. But to put that same thing in English is a very tough task, and Swamiji says, only those who have tried know how difficult it is. So now we are here in a manner to quickly recap what we did in the chapter 4, which is Jnana Karma Sannyasa Yoga. We will quickly go through that. The first 16 verses in the chapter 4, it talks about the divine incarnation, that the divine incarnation is true. I mean, it is not a question which cannot be entertained any further, whether it is true or not. I mean, we cannot have those kindergarten questions asked ever again. So Sri Krishna comes and upfront he tells that I have been there through and through. I have been the witness of this entire creation. Well, not in the form of Vasudeva Krishna, but Vasudeva Krishna identifies himself with the Ishvara because of his stature and his caliber and his knowledge particularly. And Sri Krishna democratizes his knowledge, saying that this knowledge is not something which is owned by me in the body of Krishna. Anybody can have access to this knowledge. And it was very timely, and it is transforming, as well as it has got a transformative effect. That the very fact that the Lord himself comes and gives this message, an invitation. So that means the message is more widely applicable, because in the Lord's eyes there cannot be any partiality. And his easy approachability, and he has set the society in motion after creating all the beings, so to say. Well, of course, the creation also, verily in the 5th chapter, he talks about a bit of the creation, that he is not the doer and all, but we will come a little later. But he says that the entire society in the process of creation has been set into motion. There is a perfect order in this creation, and this has a universal sanction. Suppose somebody comes and asks a question, so why are we alive? Why do we have to go through this rut of managing this day-to-day affairs, almost a clockwork routine? Then he says, no, see, this clockwork routine that is being set is not something just as a machine would be doing it. Of course, it is set into motion, but the Jivatma, the human beings, the living beings, are here for a better purpose of life. And in order to achieve that better purpose of life, we can approach the divine Lord, from whom we have originated. So he has not exempted himself in the participation of the evolution of the human mind. He says that use me, the Krishna, the Aishvara, the Supreme Lord. Call him by whichever name you are comfortable with. So for me, Sri Ramakrishna is the ideal, and I would always see the Ishvara as Sri Ramakrishna. So like that, even everyone have their own personal ideal, and they can map that particular ideal to the Ishvara and then appeal to him or her. And then that easy approachability is coming because of this concept of reincarnation. And in this social network, which is set into motion, one important thing which Sri Krishna wanted to remind us is, since it has got the sanction of the supreme authority, there can be no partiality. There's no big or small. That's a very beautiful idea. And those who reach out to him for favor, for kind of benefits, the Lord says that he shall appropriately apportion his own gifts to the mankind. He says gifts, but it is actually earned by one's own devotion, prayer, and that one-pointed concentration. Finally, Swami Vivekananda comes and says that how much ever we pray and we feel that our prayers are being answered, never has there been a being outside you that has blessed upon you, but it is you who have blessed yourself. The first you is capital U and the second U is the small u. So the capital U means it is a U with a better and higher identification. And the smaller U is the one which is cringing and crying and then getting crouched in the worldly circumstances. So, but however, if we split the small u and the capital U as me and the God, so the way we approach the God also approaches us and helps us. And Sri Krishna gets into the philosophy of action and inaction between 17 and 22. He says, he gives a marked distinction between what is action and what is inaction, which is etymologically misunderstood. At least, rather, it doesn't agree with the etymology of these terms. And he, in fact, clearly tells that merely abstaining from action, which is a kind of an idling activity. Idling activity is again an oxymoron. Anyway, whenever somebody is idling, that cannot amount to inaction. So Naishkarmya is actually a state of Naishkarmya Siddhi, Sri Krishna says, that a person attains the status of inaction. That doesn't mean that he sits like a stock or a stone. But it's just that he is having a higher degree of awareness of his own self, and he is free from all the egoistic impulse, even while engaging in the body and mind. That's a very careful catchphrase. So he's engaging in the body and mind, but the ego, when it is attached with this engagement, what happens? It gets, it gains mass, it gains inertia, and it gains localization. It gains gravity. I mean, all the scientific words I'm using only to mean to say that you get limited from all-encompassing self-awareness. We become ego-aware. So we have to be released from the ego awareness, the egoistic impulses. And Naishkarmya Siddhi says that state actually exists, and in that we have a full awareness of our own higher identity. And how is therefore inaction defined? Sri Krishna comprehensively says that it is disciplined action, but that disciplined action is rooted in the discriminative knowledge. That knowledge, what does it say? It simply says, there are several meditative practices he has given in the form of yajna 23 to 35, where you will clearly see how this kind of discriminative knowledge can be applied through the vehicle of yajna. So, in fact, Sri Krishna eulogizes yajna to the extent that even the so-called the origin of the creator, origin of the creation, namely the Brahma, or whichever name you would like to call him as. So we call the Chaturmukha Brahma. So the Puranic descriptions of this are very, very graphic. How he originated from nowhere, absolutely, from the Garbha of Srimad Narayana, and he comes through lotus, Padmanabha, and then all of us remembers that he has been the firstborn, so to say. And then he has been vested with the duty and the responsibility of orchestrating this creation, and so on and so forth. Then he starts to worrying that how do I do it? And then he gets the inborn intuition, because he has done that in the previous cycles also. So, these are all, very graphic description which we get in Puranas. And they have their own sanction. The message here is that Brahmadeva himself uses the concept of sacrifice in order to do the creation. So, and every action, this between 23 and 35, through the practice of yajna, the sacrifice, taking the formal fire ritual as a model, he says that every action can be transmuted into yajna. And why is the sacrifice is so sacred that it needs to be practiced by everyone? The answer says that every aspect of the sacrifice is indeed Brahman. If I remember correctly, it is verse 22, Brahmarpanam Brahmahavihi, Brahmagno Brahmanahutam, Brahmaiva Tena Gantavyam, Brahma Karma Samadhina. It's a very beautiful verse where the model of yajna as a fire ritual is taken, and every anga, every accessory is taken, and it is eulogized to be Brahman itself. The very action is Brahman, the very engagement is Brahman, and the very accessories that we use in this activity are Brahman. The fruit is Brahman, the consumer is Brahman. So a kind of an all-encompassing oneness vision is projected at the very beginning of the yajna ritual, which Sri Krishna proposes. And then from 36 to 42, we have the real power of enlightenment. A man gets to achieve, after the rigorous practice of the disciplined action, as well as discriminative wisdom, by practice of yajna. So he says jnana, a person gets jnana. Jnana, the knowledge. Knowledge is ultimate purifier. See, it is the ajnana, the ignorance is often compared to, even the ice age darkness that is trapped within a cave. So the ignorance or the darkness may be very old, right from the day of creation. But a single strike of a match, Sri Ramakrishna says, a single strike of a match can dispel that darkness or the ignorance. So it's the highest purifier. If you consider darkness as something which is unwanted, and the light is something which is wanted, so the wanted comes and removes the impurity called unwanted, the darkness. So jnana has got the power to purify all our the inner self. The inner, when we say the inner self, what we actually mean by inner is, it's not the question of the inner entrails of the body we call inner. When we mean inner, when we mean higher, when we mean superior, when we mean transcendental, what we mean is a force which is subtler than what we perceive as gross. Anything subtler is considered to be, in a very graphic language, inner. Inner is something hidden, right? Hidden is not immediately in the purview. So in order to get that into the foreview, we have to do a little bit of work and a kind of an opening. So that's the reason why this idea of inner and outer and all these things keep coming, above, below, and then all these things. They are not to be taken literally, but in the degree of subtlety, the grosser things are considered as the lesser ones, and the subtler things are considered as the higher ones. But why is it higher? Because it's very simple. Once you get knowledge, you get power. And once you get power, you get control over things. Knowledge is power in the sense that you can control the lesser happenings. When you know how to control, all these devices using wireless, you have understood because of the subtle knowledge, subtle principles which are there in the nature. We all of a sudden find ourselves invincible in being able to communicate even through this medium of streaming and so on. So the power, knowledge is power, and it comes and removes the darkness. So a sinner becomes a saint. That's a very beautiful idea. A sinner does not have an eternal damnation. So Sri Krishna comes and says that sinner cannot be branded once and for all, just as you stamp something. So he also has a future being a saint. And he says, Chipram, he happened, at the very dawn of the knowledge, at the very instant, the sinner becomes a saint. It's not just as the way the matchstick removes, when it is struck with and produces light, it removes the darkness. And he also says that this knowledge can be attained by a constant engagement in the discipline. However, there is another route. If you happen to meet a good teacher, so if you can take refuge with the teacher, then often we find that he makes our life a little easier. See, a person can always learn. For example, Arjuna had the good fortune of being tutored by Dronacharya. Of course, he has a regal pedigree, and likewise, we also found Ekalavya. Ekalavya, when he approached Dronacharya somehow declined. But then, Swayameva Atmanatmanam. So he did the what you call as the Herculean resolve, as you may say, the Bhishma Pratigna. Of course, Bhishma is coming in Mahabharata only. Prior to that, he has done the Pratigna. That kind of a Pratigna, Ekalavya takes and then masters the whole knowledge. So what Arjuna had, apparently Ekalavya had more than that. So a constant engagement is also possible. But if you have a teacher, it becomes much more authentic, and your trials will be much lesser. Maybe the teacher himself may put a lot of trial, but that's by the way of teaching process. But the knowledge gets very easily digested, and then he is there for us to help. So get a teacher, latch on to him, serve him with all humility, give him the due respect, and show him the eagerness and curiosity, and then the constancy in purpose for which you are going and approaching him. It's not that, a discussion over a coffee table that we can engage with a serious teacher. If you call a Nobel laureate to your place, you better engage him with the intellectuals around. So that's obvious. A Nobel laureate won't be happy with just a cup of coffee or a chit chat over the morning news and have a little bit of science discussion. Certainly not. So such a Nobel laureate in the form of a teacher, if he's there, a man of realization, full power is there with him. And once we get him, we have to make the best use of it. Opportunity, not everyone gets it. In fact, Sri Krishna, our Shankaracharya, says that in the very first verse of Vivekachudama, Jantunam Narajanma Durlabham, the life of a human being is extremely difficult to get. Narajanma Durlabham. Ataf Pumstvam, he says, to get what is called as a healthy body. Pumsa here actually means a male body. Male body does not mean male in terms of the organs, but it says that the maleness is associated with the firm resolve and the good health. So it has got various connotations. So Ataf Pumstvam. So Viprata means learning. A person who has got a better learning. That's even rare to get. Tasmat Vaidika Dharma Marga Parata, that means he has been brought under a tradition. A person who has been well knowledgeable, but the knowledge has not been really a kind of an erratic scampering over the forest of things, but he has been trained. He knows how to write the LaTeX. He knows what is the first principles, what are the 3 modes of experimentation. I mean, he gets into a structure, and then he knows how to further make the scientific inquiry in a much more structured manner. So that dharma is necessary, that tradition is necessary. You should know what plagiarism is. I mean, see, this is the kind of knowledge we get when we get into a structure. It's not, no scientist vacantly thinks into the thin air and tries to look for some answers. That it doesn't work that way. There is a method even in madness. So that method comes through what is called as the dharma. Vaidika dharma is the matter of concern here, at least. Vipratvam asmat param. And then he says that Vipratvam here actually means a person who has got remarkable memory. A person who is able to remember whatever he learns. You may make a mistake, but you are not supposed to commit the same mistake again and again. So we must learn from our past mistakes and then move forward. So that particular quality is there in the Viprata, a person of learning. That means he doesn't forget the past, both gains as well as misgivings. Viprata. Then he says, Vedic Dharma, Viprata. Then the verse continues, he says, Asaf Pumsanto Viprata, Vedika Dharma Marga Parata, Viprata Asmat Param, Atma Natma Vivechanam Sonubhavo, Brahmatmana Samsitihi, Muktirna Shatakoti Janma Sukrate, Punye Vina Labhyate. He says, after got all these, gifts of the nature, if a man does not strive to strive to acquire the right knowledge, then it is as good as committing suicide. You take the highest weapon, a nuclear weapon, and then you cannot subject it onto a sparrow. Correct? A sparrow is not the target for the highest nuclear weapon. So a nuclear force is meant for better purposes. You build electricity, you build several utility that can help the society in many ways, but to apply that on a sparrow, it's a sheer travesty. So that perspective has been put in that place, and then of course Acharya Shankara goes out to say that if in case you get a teacher, do serve him. Shankara also emphasizes that do serve him, because he will bridge the gap between the known and the unknown, but he will leave sufficient leverage for you to put an effort. The effort he will not compensate, but he will bridge the gap of all the confusions, the doubts that we have. He will take us quickly to the path of conviction. So this way, chapter 4 marks a wonderful transition from 3 upward. Now we are equally well poised to get into the yoga of renunciation. It's called the Karma Sannyasa Yoga. Arjuna begins with a question here. So if you, I would like to take the book. I want to keep the book nearby so that I can read the verses. If you have the book, you can also follow the verses. That will really be very helpful. And the meaning given therein is also quite straightforward, because the language is very, very lucid. Gita is gifted with the lucidity, and it has made the message universal and apparently eternal even. So, okay, I have now gone elsewhere. I should have gone to the 5th chapter, but happened to move to the 4th one. Okay. Sannyasam karmanam Krishna punar yogam cha shamsasi yachreyas yetayor ekam tanme bruhi sunischitam. Arjuna begins with a question. He says, Krishna, you have been enunciating the path of knowledge, which is called the Sankhya Yoga, the Sankhya rather. And then the path of action, which is called the Yoga. Okay, the path of yoga, which is the disinterest. When Sri Krishna refers to yoga in general, he means karma yoga. Okay, so that is this idea. It's not that we are extrapolating. All the commentators also opine the same way, that yoga typically refers to, without any qualification, if yoga is used, he refers to what is called as karma yoga. And what is characteristic of karma yoga? That you have right only over the action, but not to the results thereof. That's all. This one simple verse, Sri Krishna makes it very clear. So he says, but essentially action need to be taken, need to be undertaken. So that's a huge botheration. So path of knowledge doesn't insist that you should engage in action. So there is a clear, explicit renunciation of action being promulgated. That is the path of knowledge. And what do these people who follow the path of knowledge do? They do Atma, Anatma, Vivechanam. Vivechanam means discrimination, Vichara. What is Atma and what is Anatma? What are the qualities of the Anatma? Anatma means the lesser ones which are perishable. Atma is the highest one which is imperishable. And how the individual is getting embroiled with these Atma, Anatma, and how to separate it, how to get a clarity over how I should identify, to what I should identify myself with. From day in and day out, if we look at our routine, I would like to give each one of you an exercise here, those who are in the chat, those who are in the, I don't know how many are viewing, but about 7 are there, I guess. Anyway, so if you can take a piece of paper, and then put today's date, and then from morning, say 4:30 or 5 o'clock when you wake up, write down on every hourly routine what you have done. Right? No specific target. You just keep writing it down, and you do this exercise for a week, and then you will start beginning to see a pattern. And then you do it for a month, the pattern becomes much more stronger. Over a year, you will find that you are almost certain what you are going towards, what I am going towards, what each one of us are going towards. By looking at the paper that we ourselves have scripted, we will know. And what are the lesser ones, what are the higher ones, and what we consider as higher, superior, much more adorable, preferable in the present time. Subsequently, we will find that has become a lesser one. Our priorities keep changing. Just welcome. I mean, that's how we are actually yoked into the path of evolution. We call this as an evolution, where we give up the lesser things and acquire higher things. But unfortunately, we are not very sure in which direction we are moving towards. It's like, you take a blank paper, and then you cover most of it, and then you keep joining the dots with the nearby visibility. And then when you move the paper, you will find that if your objective is to reach the top right corner, and by the time you reach one side of the paper, if you remove the covering, you will see that the path is almost zigzagged, because you have always taken the decision based on the information available in that locality of reference. So in the immediate 360 degrees, you take a step, but if you connect all these steps, do you think all these steps will form a straight line? Certainly not. But straight line is the shortest path towards your destiny. Correct? If you mark a destiny, geometrically, right? So, but your mind has got all the freedom to do, and you can indeed do near a straight line. You can chalk out a straight line path. So, with a clear chain of causality helping you towards what you really want to achieve, provided we have the goal clarity. So, this path of knowledge is something which creates a lot of contemplative and an introspective process, out of which distills out our own priorities, our own objectives. So the path of knowledge, you will find that it is therefore less of action. You don't jump about. There is not too much running and taking a flight to Bahrain or US or Europe. No more running after things. It's much more a kind of a self-reconciled and self-absorbed, where practically there is no outward action. So there is clearly some renunciation of action in that. Sri Krishna approves that. He calls it the Sankhya Yoga, rather the Sankhya. In fact, if you see the question a little deeper, why did the question upfront start? Why did Arjuna had to put this question? Because Sri Krishna in 3rd and 4th chapter has detailed the Sankhya and the Yoga part, and he says that these are very two old paths being practiced. I myself have propounded it in the past, and so on. And then later on he comes and says that renunciation of action is much of a lesser concern, provided, given the fact that you are very much compelled by the immediate circumstances with a lot of sense of duties and responsibilities, and then it is very paining and pinching to give up these things. So how do you reconcile between this path of knowledge and the path of action? So that's a very valid question, right? So given a situation at this point in time, do I have an open choice to take the path of knowledge, the discrimination, vichara, which is jnana margi, jnana yoga as it is called as? Do I take that, or do I take the path of action? Do I have a choice? Do I have a free choice? I do have a choice, but is it that everyone is given the equal opportunities to take either of this? That's one aspect of the question. And other aspect of the question is, suppose if I take one, will it restrict the other? That is, the result that I'm going to get from one, will it prevent the result that I'm going to get from another? That's a very valid point, I do engineering and I do medical, suppose, if I have two. So the objective of getting a medical degree is very different from that of engineering degree. Well, of course, in a very abstract manner, you can say that you get to serve the society, you serve a larger community, you are culturing knowledge, and then so on. In a very abstract sense, it is same, but the practice of it and then the end of it are very different. The demands from each of these guys are very different. So sometimes one restricts the other. One depends on the other even. The modern day medical practitioner will have to heavily depend on the engineers, the instrumentations. So if the instrumentation doesn't happen, he has to go back to the old Ayurvedic practices. So the instrumentation helps. So they both help each other, and then, but a doctor cannot be an engineer cannot be a doctor. So you see, one is restricting the other. So do we have that kind of relationship between the path of yoga and the path of action? And then the last question is, these questions are implied by that single question. He says that you are speaking one against the other, but tell me one that actually will serve the purpose. Bruhi nishchitam yati shreya ekayeva. I cannot follow both or whatever you may say, but tell me one which I will have to follow for certain and get the fruit. So he says that can there be some kind of a coexistence between the kind of a mix and a match of These two practices, the path of knowledge, the deliberations, the contemplation, the introspection, and the path of disinterested action. So that sets the tone for the 5th chapter. So Krishna replies, first and foremost, he jumps the gun immediately. He says that he doesn't make the student wait for the answer till the last. He says that, sir, both are equally good. Both are equally good. But then, there is something called as the Vox Populi. Sri Krishna is an incarnation. If you set up an Indian Institute of Technology, right, and then say that this institution is meant to serve, say, 1,000 individuals. 1,000 individuals. 1,000 is really 1000, not the Sahasra in the Purusha Suktam. Okay, so where Sahasra actually means uncountable. So it is meant for 1,000 individuals. Do you think central government will fund the IIT? Certainly it will not. So it is meant for Bahujana Hitaya, Bahujana Sukhaya. Some guys may be very superior that they may not require an institution like IIT. Certainly they may not require. There are genius. And there are a few in the making. I come to hear about that on and off. So the institution is made usually for the good of many. So the idea of many, even though it is all inclusive, it is also a bit exclusive. Some people may not fit into it. Correct? It's not that they will not benefit from it. It's just that they have outgrown the prescription. They are overgrowth. Therefore, this institution is not meant for them. Okay. So Krishna says, even though the path of knowledge is great, and the path of your action is also great, but then when the Vox Populi is caught up in one particular state of existence, naturally the incarnation has got to focus more emphasis and more light and more stress on that. He says that the path of yoga action is better. Correct? So it doesn't exclude the path of knowledge, but it says it is better because he understands that the people in general they cannot remain idle. They cannot remain inactive. They are continuously engaged. Their very bones, Sri Krishna says, your very bones will make you fight. To the most befitting knowledge receiver like Arjuna. I mean, who among us can boast ourselves to belong to the categories of Arjunas and Ekalavyas? Very few. Most of us, because the exploits of Arjuna, if we read Mahabharata, we know, we will shy away from any further comparisons. So if for such a person, even for such a person, Sri Krishna comes and says, see, yoga of action is better for you because your very bones, which has been trained to function in a particular way, you cannot change that particular swabhava, your prakriti, your nature. All of a sudden, just at the drop of the hat, you cannot recoil back from all the making that has gone into what you're currently now. So he says that therefore the path of yoga, which is karma yoga, is better. And then what is the verse? And it's always nice to read the verses, Krishna says, Sanyasaha karma yogascha nishreyasa karavubhau tayostu karma sanyasat karma yogo vishishyate. Even though both are same, karma yoga vishishyate. It stands better for practice. I remember in this juncture, Sharat Chandra Chakravarti, a very famous novelist. One guy approached him and he said, sir, what would you advise me? I have a flair for writing. And what would you advise me? Do I start with the short stories or shall I pick up a novel? Novel, it runs into several pages. It's a huge volume and it contains a lot of components. A lot of, not as big as a kavya, as we know from our Eastern literature, but novels are certainly much larger in size than the short stories. So which one do I go for? Sharat Chandra said, without even batting the eyelid, he said, go for short stories. But this guy, he said, sir, you are advising me for short stories. But you yourself wrote a novel. Then Sharachandra must have smiled a bit. I can imagine the conversation between these two guys. He must have said, yeah, true that I wrote the novel first, but I didn't go for a counseling. It came to me that I should write a novel, and I wrote. I never went for counseling. See, this is the state. So when Arjuna subjects himself that I am under confusion, tell me what is the better I need to do. Remember that? Karpanya dosho apahata subhavaha pruchhami tvam. I'm asking you, just as this guy went and asked Sarachandra, what should I do? Dharma sammuda chetaha yachreha syan nishchitam bruhitan me shishyaha teham shadhimam tvam prapannam. Beautiful idea. So when a person like Arjuna, status of Arjuna tells, we should have a very, very humble reckoning of our own capabilities, right? So he says, so Krishna says, he doesn't say that something is lower or higher. That's not nothing like lower or higher. See, you have a round hole. How do you take a square peg and put it in a round hole? It's just a misfit. It's just that you need to prepare the hole in the manner that the peg will get in. So he's preparing the peg here. He's preparing the hole. There are two sets of holes, and you happen to be a square peg. So Krishna says that instead of putting it in a round hole, you put it in a square hole. It's not an issue at all. So he says, and then the next verse says, renunciation is now explained. He says, Shreyaha sa nitya sannyasi yona dveshti na kankshati nirdvandvo hi mahabaho sukam bandhat pramuchyate. So after having said that karma yoga is better, then he immediately comes and, Arjuna is quick to ask questions. So whenever a theorem is put, a corollary has to be put for a better understanding of the theory. So he puts a corollary here. He says, a person who is a true mark of a renunciate, you may ask a question, is it that you are, just because you are preferring Krishna, that karma yoga, do you think I should do it? Don't I still need to deliberate on my choice? Then Sri Krishna says, yeah, you can. So, but just take a checklist whether you would qualify for that top 1% or top 0.001%. A mark of a true renunciation, that he never hates, not dve. There will be absolutely no sense of hate. Na kankshati. There is absolutely no sense of extra outwardly desiring. Na dveshti, na kankshati. Nirdvandvaha. A person will never take sides. If Gukesh and Magnus Carlsen, by the divine ordination, if they happen to meet in the final, of course, I don't know whether Carlsen is playing this FIDE World Cup match. I'm not aware. I'm not following it. But if two guys are there and one is an Indian, we know whom we will support for, right? Of course, I will frankly admit that I will support the Indian. So I'm still in that level. I have no qualms in accepting that fact. When it comes to India, I'm a kind of not a patriot, but almost bordering in fanatic. Well, that's on the lighter vein. So we know our preferences. We take sides. But if I am a true renunciate, absolutely the burning renunciation is there within me, where I always value the very essence of my life and not the vagaries of life. The chess comes and goes, a vagary. The very essence of my life is in Atma, is in Brahman, is in my identity, the higher form of identity. So once I have known that value, why would I be really bothered about, taking towards this? Swami Vivekananda clearly says that. Swami Vivek, somebody says that, are you not an Indian and should give a message to India? He says that, what is got to do with me regarding where I am born? I am the Atma, I am the soul. I belong to everyone. Vivekananda gives a loud message there. So he has dissociated himself from associating even with the world in any country. He came back to India. He had a different message because he had a purpose of awakening the masses. In fact, if we take the complete works of Swami Vivekananda, remove India and put any country, that message will be applicable. A bit of spiritual stuff which he has spoken out of his kind of a filial leaning towards India, minus that. You take any message of Vivekananda and replace India with, say, Africa or Zambia or Zimbabwe or US or Germany, it will perfectly fit well. It is that kind of a higher identification he had when he gave the message even to the Indians. So this person who is a true renunciate, he will never be caught with the opposites. Acha, it's about 10:45. We have about 45 minutes. We're done. And any questions you would like to share with me through whatever? Okay, so there are no questions. I'll continue with this. So he never caught up with the pairs of opposites. So pairs of opposites, further Sri Krishna comes and says, since this is the penultimate class, maybe I'll jump the gun and tell them, Shita, Ushna, Sukha, Dukkha, Mana, Apamana. It actually, so Shita, Ushna, we all know, right? It's heat and cold. So that means, does he have a buffalo skin? Okay, fine. And then Sukha, Dukkha, does it mean that he has no feelings at all? No heart? Is he a kind of a, hard-hearted, they say, right? Is he a hard-hearted guy who will not be empathetic, not be sympathetic, and then therefore because he does not have dukkha for himself, sukha for himself, he will not find the sukha and dukkha with others also. So therefore, is he a kind of a stock or a stone? So sukha dukkha is also he is not siding with. And then mana apamana. I mean, absolutely shameless character. He doesn't think twice before uttering anything, whether this will bring him fame or infamy, or it will hurt some others, and then whether this has there are any specific takeaways from this. He's absolutely unconcerned of any of this, is it? Pairs of opposites, not caught with the pairs of opposites. So does it mean that he is a total misfit in the society? Not at all. If we see it in a literal sense, we get this kind of a very absurd meaning. But if you read this Shita, Ushna, Sukha, Dukkha, Mana, Apamana a little further, Shita and Ushna are felt by the body, correct? So when the sun is sithering heat with 50 degrees centigrade, you will certainly feel hot. You cannot refuse. Of course, you can get into some cooler, artificial enclosures. That apart, you will feel the heat. So this is what is called prakritika dharma. The heat will be felt as heat. There is not a single being created in the world for whom heat will be felt as cold, or cold will be felt as heat. If that is the case, then this person will have to be, subject to serious scientific investigation in order to understand the dynamics of the physics. Physics will be rewritten if heat will be experienced as cold. So physics laws are, almost infallible. So that means some experiences are unavoidable. When we say Shita Ushna, there are unavoidable experiences with the world. You will have to put through all those unavoidable experiences. So by saying Shita Ushna, Sri Krishna has categorically put under the single umbrella of all the external forces that affect the individual without his concern, or without his permission. It doesn't require his permission for the sun to shine at 50 degrees centigrade. So, and then he has mastered that. Anything comes from the external world cannot topple his balance. So that is Shitoshna. And then Sukha Dukkha is there the interface. There is an interface, a cell wall. A cell is supposed to be very well protected by the cell wall. Things simply cannot enter into the cell. It may be floating in a sea of garbage, but the internal, the nucleus, the mitochondria, and all of these are protected by the cell wall. Nothing comes in. But for the food material, only the food material can enter into, that's called semi-permeability. So in order for the self to have a healthy existence, it must have this semi-permeability to permit only things that are conducive for its existence and not the ones which will hurt the existence. So likewise, we do have that kind of a semi-permeability within our own mental formation, that the ones which are, we have to take the things and then we cook up some material, some content, some experience from within. When the sun is burning hot at 50 degrees centigrade, felt in Jaipur in the Thar desert, you have the option of staying quiet or fretting and fuming. Now, the fretting and fuming is the construction of the human mind. The sun did not dictate the individual to fret and fume. But there, the Jaipuris themselves, they are habituated to that. They know how to battle against it, heat. But a person from Dehradun goes there, it will take a hell out of his life. So, where is the difference? It is in the mental structure. So they have understood how to battle against the heat. At the same time, the nights are very cold. They know how to battle against the cold also. Okay, so the inevitable things which are coming from outside, when it gets transformed into an internal experience, due to the unavoidability of the exchange of information from the outside to the inside, creates sukha and dukkha, happiness, pleasure, and displeasure or aversion or unhappiness. So when these things, when the human mind constructs for itself, then can we exercise the mental force, mental power, and transform this experience and check the excessive takeaway from a given experience? There is something called as the race away. The race away, thermal race away, they call it. Runaways and raceaways. A small spark will cause a huge fire over a series of runaways. Correct? So like that, a small spark came from outside, but the mind cogitated on that, built upon it a huge citadel of either a pleasurable or an unpleasurable experience. So much of the cogitation could have been avoided. And we can free ourselves from the clutches of these mentally created polluted substances, polluted experiences. Often, most of it are exaggerated. So that comes under the sukha dukkha. I can take a rasgulla, put in my mouth. Yeah, there are some exchanges, nervous titillations, brain processing, and it produces some hormone of some liking, but I don't need to jump over it. Why should it be a head-toppling experience for me to have enjoyed the rasgulla? Well, as by rasgulla, I meant anything that will give you joy, sukha. So that's the point here. So that means the person has a greater exercise on the mind. And then comes mana and apamana. Here, the content of the experience is completely produced by the mind. There is absolutely no contribution from the external. Suppose somebody looks at me in a very peculiar manner, and when I look at him and then I have some kind of an inferiority complex, assume. And when I look at this guy and then I start interpreting his way of looking at me, and then I immediately develop a sense of distaste or kind of an anger or a disappointment, or even I crouch myself within and cry within. Hey, see how these guys are putting me down. Nothing has happened from outside. But why is it that I'm feeling insulted? Because that content is completely built from within. But what is the main raw material for this? The raw material is collected over several experiences, and that constitutes my own personality. Likewise, somebody comes and says a few praising words. They are mere words. How does it end up? At the end of the day, the words have gone. The guy who has given those praise also must have forgotten. And the paper which published those praises must have gone already to the dustbin and to the samosa packing companies. And your name, your form, everything would have been oiled. But still, we will be floating in the air, saying, Amar Naam, Khabar uteche. This is mana and apamana. They're completely a mental substance. So the pairs of opposites here, so Sri Krishna has actually covered the entire gamut of the human experience by saying Shitoshna, the completely external experience, Sukha Dukkha, intermediary, and Mana Apamana, absolutely a mental content. So this is the entire gamut of the human experience. And we have the pairs of opposites across this gamut. And then this man maintains his solidarity across all this. Oh, wow. I wish, if at all Sri Krishna, even the dream, if he comes and says, okay, ask one boon I will give you, I would like to ask from him that please allow me to stay in this manner for at least 1 minute in my life, if not 1 hour. So this is something which is a very, very adorable quality. And Sri Krishna says, see, the top 0.001% who will aspire for the path of knowledge. No stopping people from taking it, but know for yourself whether you have these basic qualities. And then the comparison of the two paths, Sri Krishna says that why is it that the persons who are going for the absolute path of knowledge are less in number? That's because in the sixth verse, it says that one is very difficult and the other one is efficacious. Efficacious, this is efficient in terms of as much as you apply, that much you get. That is what efficiency here is about. Efficiency is not a Boolean. It is gradation. You put 10% of effort, you will get less than or equal to 10% of ROI. So that way, path of action is efficacious. So what is the verse that actually tells that? Let me open the shloka. Yoga yukto vishuddhatma vijitatma jitendriyaha. No, not that one, sorry. Sanyasastu mahabaho dukkham aptum ayogataha. The sannyasa, the path of renunciation, and which is basically the path of knowledge. Mahabaho, the long-armed, dukkham aptum. In order to attain that particular state, a person who is ayogataha, a person who has not, got the benefits of having practiced karma yoga, then for him it is difficult, slightly difficult, because quite often we see there are a lot of people who resort to the path of renunciation, the physical form, as taking Garuva and then becoming a wandering monk and so on, is very welcome. But there are umpteen occasions where these guys, unable to traverse the path any further, they have recoiled and gone back the worldly way. Nothing wrong, absolutely nothing wrong. But it's just that they have got a very tough and hard experience, which revealed to them their real earning and then the real state of existence. And then, we should begin the journey from where we are. There's no point in trying to, jump to the 8th rungs of the ladder when you are in the ground. So it becomes difficult. So dukkham aptam ayogata yoga yuktaha munir brahma achirena adhigacchati. A person who is not accomplished in yoga, for him detached work will be very helpful. Yoga yuktaha here means what? Karma yoga yuktaha. A person who is detached in the karma yoga, for him achirena, the evolution happens. Achirena means almost like at the drop of the hat. Very quickly, very immediately it happens. What are the qualities of such a yogi? What is it that he has to have? See, the qualities of the renunciate has been put before. The renunciate in the sense renunciation of action. The path a guy who is going through the contemplative, introspective, vichara marga. Very attractive, very, very intoxicating kind of life. But, you have to breathe 24 hours. You have to live every day. So we have to plan for the future. So unless we have sufficient amount of the bulldozing material within us, jumping into this path of renunciation, total renunciation from action, will have to be reserved for some future prospect. So Karma Yoga has now been ascertained as the most efficacious for the common man, for most of the men. So what are the qualities, by the way? It's not that you do whatever you do and then you call yourself a Karma Yogi. He also has some discipline. He says, Yoga Yuktaha, what is he then? He is Vishuddha Atma. He has purity in mind. What does purity in mind mean? It's something which we have to understand. Vishuddha Atma. Here, Atma does not mean the soul. Atma has got several meanings. Near about 6 to 7 meanings are there directly addressed in the Bhagavad Gita. And here, Atma here means mind, manas. Buddhi is also Atma. Hridaya is also Atma. Your soul is also Atma. In fact, body is also Atma in some connotations. So there are multiple meanings for Atma. In fact, grammarians, they say, if you take an object, if you look at an object and you don't know the name of the object, grammarians give you the full freedom to use the word Atma. Because Atma is all encompassing. There is nothing which is not pervaded by Atma. So, what you are comprehending is Atma only. Apparently, we are giving other names to identify that, the specificities. So, grammarians are very right. So, Vishuddha Atma, what does pure mind mean? The pure mind here actually means mind. If you look at the functioning of the mind, it is sankalpa and vikalpa. Either it works towards, takes up something which it wants to work towards, or gives up something and it recoils back. Always contemplating in the sankalpa and vikalpa. It's a huge flux. And it's like, a whirlpool. The mind is always in that whirlpool. Now here, Shuddha, as a result, what happens, I take a resolve currently that I will read, say, Bhagavad Gita. Next 1 year, I will read Bhagavad Gita. I may not memorize the verses, but Swami Jnanagamyananda has mentioned a few verses in the Vivekananda study circle classes. So I will memorize those verses at least, say 10 verses. Right? And you take a firm resolve at the end of the year, and you come to say that you have not even read those 10 verses. So this is an impure mind. But that guy who reads the book and then is able to apply himself and then memorizes those 10 verses, this guy has got a grade of higher purity than the other person. It's not the question, it is not that because he read Bhagavad Gita, his mind is pure. Not at all. But he was able to fulfill a resolve. That is the most important thing when it comes to watching your own mind. Because when in the mind, a lot of compulsions come and it throws away our previous resolves. And we dilute ourselves, we compromise ourselves, and but we adorn, we decorate this particular aspect of the human mind, saying that it is all in the nature. Yes, Krishna says, yes, it is in the nature. He's going to say in a very, very beautiful language, it is this nature, but it is a lower nature. You have got a higher nature also. Why is it that we are resorting to lower nature? Is it not escapism? That you are explaining away your weakness by just resorting to your lower nature. And then completely shunning away as if the higher nature doesn't exist at all. But there are people who have taken up resolves and lived up to that. They have never given up even once in their life. What do you call them? Did they not have any natural compulsions to give up that? all the path towards the resolve, fulfillment of the resolve are all hard. They're all difficult. Because you have to overcome your habit of excusing yourself. That's not easy. Those who have tried know how difficult it is to begin with. But once you get the taste of mastering your lower self, you find that the higher selves is much more intoxicating. That is what is called Shama Sukha. Shama is basically control of the mind, and then you get a Sukha out of it. How is that you control and you get Sukha? That's the beauty of our nature. That is the unveiling of the higher nature. Man is pleasure driven to some extent. Pleasure can be defined in a way, some way or other. So you get pleasure even in that, even in the control, the mastery over your own. So that Vishuddhatma, a person who can exercise a firm resolve, he has a better and a purer mind. Vijita Atma. Vijita Atma here actually is the holding on to the resolve, and a person who has conquered the demand of the lower self. So I want to run to the Ibako. I was referring to this. One of the students approved it. Maharaj, you are very correct. When we want to taste Ibako ice cream, wherever we are, we cycle towards. The shop is just about a stone throw distance. So we just go there, have the Ibako, enjoy, and then come back. Now, there's nothing wrong in it. Nothing absolutely wrong in it. But if it tempts you and prompts you to take decisions in life which are not reversible, right? So then we will have the whole life to repent. That's the mistake which people do quite often coming under the compulsion of the lower senses. So that Vijita, that you have to have a total victory over your lower self, and not only that, get established in the resolve. So Vishuddhatma helps you to get established in the firm resolve, and Vijitatma will tell you that you will henceforth never come under the compulsion of the lower self. There are the two forces. I often refer this to, the train which is scaling the peaks, slanting peaks. We need a back engine and a front engine. The back engine stops the derailment, or not, or rather the receding pull of the due to gravity. The entire mass of the train is quite heavy, right? So it may slide backward, and in order to arrest that, we need the back engine. And then earlier we had, I do not know whether these days we have it or not, and then the front engine will give the direction and then start pulling. So the front engine will experience a kind of a zero gravity, because the back engine cancels the gravity. So the front engine, the back engine, they share the load, and then the vehicle, the locomotive, takes a peaceful journey forward. So that Vijita Atma is the force which does not allow the derailment, or what is called the receding part, and the Vishuddha Atma is the front engine which takes it forward. Jitendriya, the senses are under our control. See, Karma Yoga, who in the earth would have imagined that these qualities, though we may not have, it's just that we may have to strive towards acquisition of these qualities. Jitendriya, senses are under our control. You see, the moment we say that Ibako ice cream is dragging us, or some kind of a pleasurable experience is dragging us towards that object of enjoyment, very good, well and good. We have the freedom to do that. If we don't do it now, then who will do it? It's mine. We own it. After all the justification, but if we just look back, sit back, and then, after you have the Ibako ice cream, of course, sit forth and then ask, you had the previous experience of the Ibako ice cream, and then that sense of taste, sense of smell, and even the texture, all put together, the three senses are there together. It has strongly registered its acceptability and its desiring and its want. So the senses have actually fed back to the mind, back to your consciousness, saying that this is my preference. The senses have stamped their preference for that particular experience. This is something which is happening without our knowledge. So Sri Krishna puts her right on this and then says that Indriya needs to be trained. That is, have the tobacco ice cream and tell your mind, saying that, hey, this Indriya is the one which propelled me to take it. And henceforth, I will take it only if my mind wants it, not when the Indriya demands it. A mouth-watering experience happens the moment you look at some pickles. You don't even have to look at the pickle. The photo of the pickle is sufficient for you to have a mouth-watering experience. So these are all very, very strong sense associations. So otherwise, how do you get a transformation in your tongue organ instantly? The watering experience requires a lot of chemistry to happen within your own constitution. It's not easy. It is for the want of this water, the salivating experience. People, take a lot of appetizers, and it happens at the snap of the finger. The moment the picture of a pickle is shown to you, your desired pickle is shown to you. I have felt myself. Sarva bhutatma bhutatma. The karma yoga should not engage in partisan attitude with people. He should always have his mind open, and he should not see. He may possibly resort to some help from people. Thereby, he may be discriminating one from the other. But the bedrock of his relationship in the social world must be that he must be even to people. He must be even to. So, sarva bhutatma bhutatma, feeling that one. So now these qualities we have to slowly imbibe ourselves while we are actually engaging in karma yoga. Otherwise, what happens? We may wish. What does karma yoga say? You have right over action, but not to the fruits thereof. If you will watch your mind and then you experience any experience which is contrary to this prescription, you will find that Vishuddhatma, Vijitatma, Jitendriya, Sarva Bhutatma, in one of these qualification, you would have been failing. At least one you would have been failing. It's very clear to point out. So Sri Krishna puts these 4 pillars and then gives us a wonderful help here, hint. And then the verse in 426 earlier, I presently don't recollect that verse. Yes. That is Indriyani Indriyarthebhyaha. That is the relationship. Relationship is one of the practice of yajna. When you're eating the tobacco ice cream, there is a nerve center in your brain that processes this tobacco input, coupled with your own imagination. It has a sense of a kind of an intoxication, being happy about having that experience. Now, when you do that, we have to train our senses, saying that, array, this ice cream is fed to the sense, not to the mind. Why the mind should go, kind of unbridled over this experience? The mind should be put under check. Okay, I took the ice cream. Ice cream is nice, certainly. The sense organ processes it. Sense organ has got its own reflexes. So there is some bit of acquiescence. There is an acceptability. That very acceptability of a particular sense experience gives some calmness to the mind. If there is a rejection, it creates an aversion in the mind. That is okay. Up to that we can stop. But then taking that and then digging out the past experiences of the ice cream, comparing that experience with this experience, and then say, array, I took this, but it is not as good as what I did before, Or you say, array, these guys have improved the quality. Last time it was something, and this time it is something very different. And then otherwise you would have said, oh, last time I took vanilla, this time I took strawberry, and yeah, this particular taste is quite a welcoming taste. So the mind is doing that extra mile of running in processing this experience along with what is called as the corpus that you have accumulated. So mind need not get engaged in that. Correct? So that was already explained in 426. The sense experiences, the sense objects are fed to the sense organs. That's it. Fire, the fuel into the fire. The fire has consumed the fuel. That's it. Both the fire is happy and the fuel is done. There should not be anything, no remnant out of it. It should not leave any residue. It's possible. through practice. And that is being expounded here. Naiva kinchit karomiti yukto manyete tattvavit pashyan shrinvan sprishan jigran ashnan gachan shwapan shwasan pralapan visirjan grinhan unmishan nimishan api indriya nindriyartheshu varthanta iti dharayan. So how do we say that? How do we practice this indriya? He is only engaging with indriyartha. The senses are engaging with sense objects. So how do we have this objectivity in our experience? So Sri Krishna, what he says is, he lists down what are the various kinds of sense experiences we have. Pashyan, while looking; Shrinvan, while hearing; Sprishan, while touching; Jigran, smelling; Ashnan, eating; Gachan, moving; Swapan, even sleeping and dreaming for that matter; Shwasan, breathing; Pralapan, conversing; Visrajan, giving; Grihan, accepting; Unmishan, what to talk of all this? Even the batting of the eyelids. Unmishan is closing the eye. Nimishan is opening the eye, or the other way. So all these things, how do they happen? How do they happen? It is all the interaction between sense and sense objects. So an elaboration is being given. Whenever you do a very graphic enlisting, what happens? It becomes much easier for the human mind to process it and then put it into practice. The applicability of the practice gets enormously boosted whenever there is an elaboration. So Sri Krishna engages in such an elaboration. Like a lotus feet, he is not. And the 10th verse is a beautiful one. Kayena manasa buddhya kevalair indriyerapi. With this particular shloka, I will end my today's presentation. I hope it's okay, right? Shall I close with this particular verse? If the coordinator can reply yes, no, I will be able to plan accordingly. Sure. This is a very beautiful verse, and this is one of very inspiring thing in a very personal manner. Kayena manasa buddhya kevalair indriyairapi. It is verse 11. Is it so? I think, yeah. Correct. It's verse 11. Kayena manasa buddhya kevalair indriyairapi yoginaha karma kurvanti sangam tektva atma shuddhaye. I'm not putting the Devanagari there. I should have. Actually, it would have made my job easier. So before we actually get into the verse, I would like to draw your attention to a proverb. Great men are so not because they do different things, but they do even ordinary things differently. Are you sure of this? Are you sure of this particular one? Great men are so not because they do different things, but they do even ordinary things differently. It is attributed to Einstein. I don't know whether he really did that or not, but this proverb is very, very appropriate. That is, even in the case of Arjuna, in the second chapter, Sri Krishna talks about a person who has attained Brahma Lakshana, who has attained Atma Jnana. And then such a person, how do we identify him in the society? Sri Krishna faces this question from Arjuna, that how do we identify this person? And then the question was put in a very peculiar manner. He says, Sthita prajnasya ka bhasha. What is his conduct? Samadhistasya keshava. What is the state of equanimity? Okay, these two apparently seems to be a bit, evolved and very, very dignified. And then comes the next query. Sthitadihi kim prabhasheta. What will he talk? Kim asita. How will he come, walk, sit? Vrajeta. Sorry, how will he sit? Vrajeta. How will he walk? See, he has taken absolutely very, very practical lakshanas, qualities, for identifying a sthita prajna, a man who is established firmly in the highest state of realization. Whatever the scripture may say, a person that is the sthita prajna. Prajna is your what is called the knowledge. Sthita means firm knowledge, a knowledge which is unwavering. You will never have any doubt, and it doesn't diminish, and it will never be superseded also. So that is possible only with Atma Jnana, Brahma Jnana, Atma Tattva. So, and such a person, Sri Arjuna asks, how will he walk? How will he? So the ordinary things, even the ordinary things, he will do a bit differently. Apparently, it seems to be. That happens to be Arjuna's question. Correct? Here again, Sri Krishna. Sri Krishna there, he very beautifully answers. I would strongly recommend the Siddhaparagya Lakshana to be read by everyone in this group. So here again, Sri Krishna forwards his another opinion, not from the Sthita Prajna, man of realization, but from a point of view of a karma yogi. How this man will behave. That's a very beautiful idea. So the great man here is also a striving man, Great man is not that he has achieved everything. I mean, he still have to achieve for something still greater. So he's also a karma yogi for that matter. So this particular shloka is very, very appropriate in the modern context. So if you say great man, according to Sri Krishna, who is a great man? A yogi is a great man. A karma yogi is a great man. Yoginaha, what do? They don't do different things, but they do even ordinary things. How ordinary can a thing can become? Kayena, work done through body. Manasa, work done through mind. Buddhya, work done through intellect. So all the works are carried out. Fantastic. And then he says, Kevalair Indriyairapi. Kevalair Indriyairapi means even the very bodily actions, that in the sense the Indriya actions, that unmission, nimission, when you open your eyes, your seeing becomes inevitable. When the light is subjected to your eyeballs, the seeing becomes inevitable. If you're not able to see, you are pronounced dead. Correct? The eyeballs will have to react to the light, and it will process and it will give data to the brain, and the brain will process, the brain will see it. And somebody touches you, you feel the touch. And then somebody, lights an incense sticks, you will feel the good fragrance. That is, they are indriya karma, they are absolutely mundane, most ordinary. You cannot go further ordinary than that. And then Sri Krishna says, the proverb says they will do differently. Acha, how will I see differently? How will I smell differently? So the proverb actually does not include this kind of ordinariness. There the ordinariness will be, say for instance, you're writing a paper or making some kind of investigation, a very simple investigation, going and asking for something. There is some achievement, immediate achievement, purposeful achievement, maybe ordinary, but even that they will do very correctly. That is pretty understandable. But Kevalair Indriyairapi, even the sense objects and sense observations, interactions, you cannot go lesser than that. And the proverb does not have any offering for us to understand the process of how to do it differently. Correct? Sri Krishna says that even Kevalair Indriyairapi, what is the difference? But the proverb also says now how different it can be done. But Sri Krishna's verse comes and says the difference is in Sangam Tyaktva. The Sangam Tyaktva is the difference that we can bring in while we are engaging in all kinds of actions. Every kind of action, including the Indriya Karma, which are inevitable and involuntary. Even in that, we can experience Sangam Tyaktva. For instance, suppose you go and touch a silk cloth. A silk cloth is very soft. And this particular softness will give us some kind of an attraction, some kind of an attachment. You take a coarse cloth, a kind of a jute garment, you touch it, it will be rough. Then you feel that, you may not like that compared to the touch of the silk. So the touch which has given you the sense experience, involuntary experience, you cannot touch the silk and then feel jute. You cannot touch the jute and then feel silk. So Shitoshna problem. So once this experience comes in, now I have an attachment towards that. Suppose if I have, then you would like to acquire the silk cloth. I'm trivializing the example, but you can put it in your own personal life. How a particular sense experience has dragged you into further involvement. So the Sangam Tyaktva is the difference which the great men like a yogi does. And then, the English proverb does not say for what purpose this is done, right? They do even ordinary things differently. Okay, what's the purpose? Sri Krishna emphasizes that there is a purpose in doing all these hard activity. It is Atma Shuddhaye, for the purification of the mind. Because it is always this attachment to the things which are creating residual tendencies. And the residual tendencies have got this uncanny ability to surface at a later point in time and subject me to another vitiating experiences. Vitiating in the sense that it can come convoluted, it can come garbled, it can come in any manner, it can come exaggerated, depending on, suppose if I'm angry, it can get, it gains currency of anger and then comes up in a very weird forms. So, kayena manasa buddhya kevalair indriyairapi yoginaha karma kurvanti. Ordinary things, indriya karma also, sangam tyaktva. That's the difference. And the purpose, atma shuddhaye. So, thereby, karma yoga is once again emphasized in the chapter 5. We will continue with this, the reading of this particular chapter, and possibly we'll take it to completion in our next meeting, the personal meeting at IIT on 9th. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu. There is one question. Yes, Monisha, please ask. Saptarishi is having a question. So, yes. How does the clarity come? Because as you said, the path will be zigzag. Okay, that's a great thing. See, it's a zigzag because we have not paid attention to the details of the work. It is not that you are going to reach out to the quarters of unknown origin. You are discovering your own self. And the path is very well laid down by the essential qualities that we need to acquire and the process which we need to abide by. They are all very well laid down. Now, suppose if we are not educated, if we are not enlightened in that, naturally our decisions are very much prompted by what is called the urgency created by the immediate circumstances. So it will be wayward, and we will give excuses every time we falter. He says, at least this one time I will excuse myself from the resolve. Say, for instance, you have a practice of, say, getting up at 4 o'clock. I'm just saying this. And then the previous day you have a World Cup match which is happening at night. And then the match goes on till 2 o'clock, and then that day 4 o'clock you cannot get up. So once if you compromise on this, then the next day we get to see that the next time we will be able to, I can pick up. But then next time suppose you have another excuse for oversleeping. So what happens is that oftentimes we get to reconcile ourselves with the callings of the immediate nature, the immediate callings of the compelling nature. So that time our path becomes zigzag. It will be. It's not that we can completely avoid that, but subject to our completely avoiding that, you will feel that the path is actually straight. That is the path of knowledge. Simply says that Sri Krishna, for example, you see Ramakrishna faced a similar situation when his disciple Swami Turiyananda, at that time he was called Hari. So Hari Prasanna, if I remember. So he was not coming to Ramakrishna, visiting Dakshineshwar for a long time. Then one day, by chance, he came, and then Sri Ramakrishna asked, Hari, I hear that you are doing a lot of vichara. Yes, I read a lot of Upanishadic texts, and then discrimination. Vichara marga is complete, which is correct, which is right, which is permanent, which is impermanent. All these things need to be done. Unless we do that vichara, we cannot observe the path of knowledge. And then Sri Ramakrishna asked him a very poignant question. He said, "See, if the path of vichara says that the world is transitory and the worldly experiences are fleeting, and the Atman is eternal and it's permanent, and that's where your identity is, why don't you hold on to the Atman and give up the worldly experience? Give up the value that you associate with the worldly experience. What is the necessary to pick up every little experience and then say, this is worldly, so I don't want. This is worldly, so I don't want. Give up one lot. One lot you give up, then it actually it was a wonderful revelation for Turyananda. Yes, that is right. I'm completely convinced. I'm totally convinced that the world has got nothing to offer me. There are no more things which are attracting of this world. In fact, Turyananda was a man of very, very high levels of achievement. He had a perfect control on his mind. So he was a befitting person to get that knowledgeable advice from Sri Ramakrishna. And then he gave up. Further, he came to Sri Ramakrishna, he fully surrendered to him in the sense he gave up himself for the pursuit of the attainment of that knowledge. And he did that, he had that. So the path typically gets zigzag. But often when we need to correct it by following the prescriptions that we have in the scriptures. You see, following the scripture is not meant, it's not about getting indoctrinated in a specific way of working. What it simply says is, the people in the past have observed this and then they have got the benefit. It is a proven path. See, you have got one life with you. This life certainly you have with you. Now we need to take the best out of it and not waste away in the hands of nature. We can do experimentations, provided we don't, we have to do experiment with experiments for that matter. But already you know that adding sodium and chloride will give you sodium chloride. There is no point in trying to forget this knowledge and then look for joining bromine and chloride to get sodium chloride. There's no point in doing that. So you have to go fetch sodium, you have to fetch chlorine and or some forms of it, say hydrogen chloride, and then you say sodium hydroxide or whatever. Some forms of sodium you take, some compound of sodium, mix it, you get sodium chloride, full stop. That time I will not try to pick out stones and pebbles and then try to mix with hydrogen chloride and see whether sodium chloride is coming or not. I don't need to do that. If my objective is to get sodium chloride, then I know the sources of sodium, I know the sources of chloride, I'll put them together and then. But then who told you? My literature has it. So I follow the literature, I got it. Is it indoctrination? You can take up stones and do it. Maybe you will dig up a huge mine of some sodium mineral deposits in those pebbles and stones. That is something which is it's far-reaching. But as far as you wanting sodium chloride, you already have it. The process is very well laid. So scriptures give this kind of help. And the teachers come and say, the scriptures also say a lot of things, and the teachers will be able to differentiate between what is actually applicable to you, and then they help you to choose your own path. So that's the beauty of it. So it is zigzag, certainly. But there is a way we can correct the zigzagness by abiding by the edicts. So I don't know whether I answered Saptarish's question, unless there is a conversation. So if there are no more questions, I think we can call it a day. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.